The quiet shores of the Atlantic Ocean were suddenly disturbed as the sea began to roar with an unseen force. The water swirled and foamed, forming a vortex that stretched deep into the abyss. A dense, unnatural fog rose from the sea, swallowing the coastline and spreading inland. Like a living entity, the storm ships reported strange lights beneath the waves, and ancient, unseen leviathans echoed in the mist as it spread across the African continent. Entire cities were lost in the blinding fog. People fled in terror as the mists enveloped them. The world was shrouded in silence, but soon that silence was broken by whispers in the mist, growing louder and louder, speaking in a long-forgotten language. The cacophony of despair drowned out all other sounds across the globe. People were driven mad by the mist's incessant murmuring. From the mist's heart, a presence began to emerge. It was a formless, enormous shadow that stretched across the sky, blotting out the sun. The world plunged into darkness, and the whispers became screams. The shadow's shape was that of a mass of distorted tendrils. The ground shook as these tendrils wound around cities. The shadow pressed down, its voice thundering across the world, with words like knives cutting into the hearts of its listeners. You are but a fleeting spark in the void. Your gods have forsaken you. Your prayers are in vain. Surrender to destruction, for there is no salvation. The tendrils tightened around the earth, constricting their grip. But in the chaos, a voice rose, a child, no older than 10, standing alone on the last unbroken patch of earth. She looked at the shadow with fearless eyes and shouted, "You are nothing but a big bully." The shadow paused, its tendrils halting in their destruction. It had never encountered such insolence. "Little one, how dare you defy me? I am the end of all things." The child crossed her arms and stomped her foot. "I don't care. My mother said, when you face a bully, you always fight back." Hearing the child's defiance, others around the world began to protest loudly. Voices from all corners joined in, taunting the shadow with their unyielding courage. "You think you're so powerful? Go back to the pit you crawled out of. You're nothing compared to the people of Earth." The shadow recoiled, shrinking as the voices grew louder. Human defiance was like a poison, weakening its grip on reality. For the first time, the shadow felt fear and dread, emotions it had never known in its infinite existence. In a last, desperate attempt, the shadow let out a scream that shook the fabric of the universe, but only laughter cut through the darkness. The shadow's form began to disintegrate, unable to withstand humanity's indomitable will. With one last pitiful whimper, the shadow vanished, allowing the world to return to calm. The mist disappeared, and the sun shone again. The people of Earth, united in their resistance, had won a great victory. Far beyond the stars and the sea, in a realm where time and space held no meaning, a voice echoed in the void, "We have underestimated them." Another, older and wiser, responded with a knowing sigh. "They are indeed stubborn creatures, but let this be a lesson. Never underestimate the power of faith, even if it is just their own." The first laughed, sending ripples through the fabric of the void. They may have been worthy opponents after all. And so, the creatures retreated, leaving Earth alone. But deep within their limitless realms, they knew this would not be the last time they encountered humanity. As the universe adjusted to the shadow's retreat, Earth slowly recovered from the brink of destruction. The fog had cleared, leaving behind clear skies and calm seas. The world had changed, not just physically but in the collective consciousness of mankind. People spoke of the day when the world stood together and faced an ancient cosmic horror with nothing but sheer defiance. But the story didn't end there. Deep in the Atlantic, where the seabed plunged into the inky blackness of the Mariana Trench, something stirred. The remnants of the shadow, though weakened and scattered, were not completely destroyed. They drifted through the abyss, gathering strength and feeding off the dark corners of the human mind where fear still reigned. The shadow began to coalesce again, although it was now only a fragment of what it once was. It was crafty, having learned from past failures. This time, the shadow whispered not to the masses but to those who were lost, broken, and hopeless, those whose minds teetered on the edge of despair. It slowly sowed the seeds of doubt, bending their will to its own. A cult began to form, small at first but growing with each passing day. The shadow led them, whispering promises of power and revenge, a rebirth of darkness. The cultists became its vessels, spreading their influence across the globe and sowing chaos in the shadows. They secretly gathered ancient knowledge and forbidden artifacts, preparing for the day they could summon their master back to full strength. Meanwhile, the child who had first defied the shadow was now a young woman, haunted by nightmares. She felt the shadow's presence in her dreams, a cold fear creeping at the edges of her soul. But she was not alone in this fight. Others who had fought against the shadow began to experience similar visions, all drawn by the same mysterious power. These individuals, each from different walks of life, a scientist, a soldier, a teacher, a farmer, were united by their shared experiences. They were pulled together by a force they didn't fully understand. Each one brought a piece of the puzzle, a fragment of knowledge that, when combined, revealed a terrifying truth. The shadow was not the only one of its kind. The universe was vast, filled with ancient beings that existed beyond the comprehension of any mortal mind. The shadow was just one of many, each more dangerous and cunning than the last. Now, with its influence spreading through the cult, it was preparing to open a gateway that would allow these beings to enter our reality and claim it as their own. Time was running out. The group, now known as the Keepers, had to find a way to stop the cult before it was too late. They scoured the corners of the earth, searching for lost relics and forgotten knowledge, trying to devise a plan that could seal the gate forever. But the shadow was always one step ahead, using its cult to sabotage their efforts at every turn. The Keepers knew they couldn't win this battle with brute force alone. They had to outwit the shadow, using creativity and cunning as their weapons. Through their research, the Keepers uncovered a hidden history of the Earth, one that spoke of ancient civilizations that had once faced similar threats. These civilizations had left behind powerful artifacts to protect the world, but the artifacts were scattered, hidden in places where no human had ventured for millennia. The Keepers would have to face unimaginable dangers to retrieve them, and even then, there was no guarantee they could stop the Shadow's plan. But they had something the Shadow hadn't anticipated: their relentless will to protect their world. They had resisted once, and they would resist again, no matter the cost. The final confrontation was imminent. The cult had grown to thousands, congregating in remote areas where the fabric of reality was weakest. They began chanting rituals in a language older than time, filling the air around them with dark energy. A portal opened, and countless pairs of eyes watched from its edges, eager to devour a world unprepared for their arrival. But the Keepers were ready. Each held an ancient artifact, a piece of the puzzle that would seal the portal and banish the shadow and its kin back into the void. As they approached the cult's stronghold, the ground shook and the sky darkened. The battle was fierce, a clash of wills and physical strength. The cultists fought with maddened desperation, fueled by the influence of the shadow, while the Keepers fought for their world, their families, and their future. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, the sound of clashing steel, and roaring energy. Finally, as the portal began to crack, the young woman who had once faced the shadow stepped forward, holding the final artifact, a relic of unfathomable power capable of closing the portal forever. But as she raised her hand, a shadowy voice whispered in her mind, cold and mocking, "Do you think you can win? The world will fall, and you will fall with it." The woman, now strong and determined, smiled and replied, "Maybe. But we've faced you before, and we'll face you again. You may be limitless, but it's our will to survive that will prevail." With one last cry of defiance, she activated the artifact, shattering the tendrils of darkness and the portal. The cultists screamed as their master was torn from them. The darkness collapsed upon itself, and as the portal closed, the otherworldly eyes blinked out one by one, banished back into the void. Silence followed, and as the light returned, the cultists lay unconscious, the gate sealed forever. The world was saved, but the Keepers knew their work was far from over. The shadow was gone, but the threat remained. Other beings, other powers, would seek to invade their world. But now, having won this battle, they were ready for the next. As the Keepers surveyed the quiet battlefield, the young woman felt a sense of peace. They had faced the darkness and won. She knew that no matter what came, humanity would stand together to protect their world. The stars above blinked in the clear night sky, a reminder of the vast and countless secrets of the universe. But for now, the Earth was safe, and the Keepers would ensure it stayed that way.